Awesome. Thanks you all for coming out today. I have a really awesome guest on for our kind of like chats that we sometimes do here on LinkedIn and live and everything. I'm just going to kind of give a brief intro, and Terry, if I miss something, you let me know. Um, but definitely want to kind of pull forward some of the things that you're really good at, so people can understand what an awesome guest that we have on today. Uh, and and so Terry she's a visionary entrepreneur. She's a thought leader in product transparency, going back all the way back to like some of the early days of the internet. As a founder of and CEO of Sustainable Minds, they're working to help transform the built environment by making products with transparency disclosures findable. So I think one of the things we focus on a lot is sustainability and how it helps buildings. These disclosures are really, really important, so that we can operationalize the selection and use of those materials, because a lot of times, like they say, it's just really hard to find what you're looking for. And their transparency catalog is a really great way to be able to find those building materials to meet your carbon impacts, and things like that. It really closes the gap on the workflows and data. And so I'm really excited to kind of bring her forward. She's really, over the years, from what just talking with her and getting to know her a little bit more, digital product strategy and user experience and design is something that she helped pioneer, which, as someone who is really into product design for building software, it's just really cool to get to talk to someone who has that foundational experience bringing things forward. You're also the CEO of TS Design, a few other things. There's a bunch of stuff that I'll let you probably get into a little bit more as we go. But you were also, VP of various things, bringing different startups kind of on the scene in the early 2000s until you started Sustainable Minds in 2007. So I'm just really glad to kind of bring that sustainability, design thinking, technology kind of focus to bear, and also introduce her to maybe people on the architecture side who may not have learned as much about all the things you've been up to. So really happy to have you on today, and just want to kind of get started and think through, I know you and I have had a lot of discussions about, the role of AI and how that might be affecting us in the future. But I think it's like really interesting to kind of look at the past and how you've seen the cycles that have come along through technology, and what were some of the things that, like, as you rode that first wave and the second wave and the third wave of all the different things that have come, what if there's some insights that kind of help people feel, to help them feel a little bit more perspective around the moment that we maybe were in, with so much change going on, both in the sustainability world and also in the whole AI and world when it comes to affecting work. So Terry, thank you. And I'll stop chatting, but I just wanted to kind of like introduce you and make sure that people know who you are.
Well, thank you, Patrick. That was a lovely introduction. And I'm so honored to have been invited to have this conversation with you, because actually Patrick and I have had a few conversations, and when we start talking, we just are like off. We can't stop talking. We have so many directions to go in. So I'm sure this time will go by quickly. But Patrick mentioned that I've been an entrepreneur for many years, and I started my career as a designer. So I'm going to speak to this audience, assuming most people on the call are also designers. I started my career as a graphic designer. I have a degree in graphic design I'm going to say it was the best graphic design program in the US at the time, the Philadelphia College of Art. And the curriculum there was out of the Kunstgewerberschulen in Switzerland. It was the Swiss method of design, which came directly out of the Bauhaus. And I actually studied with Armin Hoffman, the guy who founded the program, knew all those Bauhaus guys. And what they taught was how to see and how to think. That's what they taught, not style. It was about how do you take any kind of a problem and break it down into its component parts, and then iteratively solve for solutions in each component, and then go to the next phase and iterate on assembling the best solutions of each component and continue to iterate. And, frankly, when is design done? Design's done when you run out of time or you run out of money, because otherwise design is never done, right? You can cross that threshold of over designing, and then that's when it starts to go the other way, when it's getting worse and worse, when you knew you should have stopped, like, 10 iterations ago. But to kind of jump back into the topic, I started my career as a graphic designer, and then desktop publishing happened, and all of a sudden, terrible tools were being given to designers made by people who weren't designers. And what it created was kind of this mass homogenization of visual language, because now everybody had to use the same bad tools to do a layout or design a logo or whatever it was. And so it really changed the dynamic for the graphic design industry to say, we got to find more stuff to design, because now other people can just get tools and make logos and call themselves designers. And so right about that time, I was introduced to the World Wide Web, and I thought, geez, this place looks terrible, but it's going to need a lot of design thinking, and I'm going to design this because I can make it up as I go, and nobody can tell me if I'm doing it right or wrong. It's literally what I thought. This is 1994. And so we started designing websites, and I got really interested in personalization. We built the very first website for a mutual fund company to offer personal pages. And anyway, kind of rode the internet wave through the 90s and realized that if you're going to build digital tools, you have to build them for people to do the things that they really want to get done. And, unlike print, the web was a way to deliver information and more experiences to enable people to get stuff done faster, better, cheaper, more, more fun. And so all of those parameters or aspects of design became, this thing called user experience. And to understand how to do good user experience design, at TS Design, my company, then we created a design analysis framework. Looked at product strategy, interaction design, information design, visual language, both as it applied to branding as well as usability, and created kind of a massive framework around that, and used it to analyze existing sites to literally get paid to write the proposal to redesign them. And so we launched this first service offering called the User Experience Audit in 1996. We were hired to do audits for UPS, Dell, Bank of America, Computer World Magazine, 3M, and literally to show them, their websites were terrible and not designed from a user's perspective, not designed to deliver what we called an intentional user experience. And then we got hired to redesign them from a user's perspective. And we developed the persona, developed the intentions for users coming, what they would need, and created an integrated environment based on a deep understanding of users' needs, why they would come to that site, and what would actually they would want to get accomplished that would then meet the business objectives that company had for those users, and then everybody wins. And so around 2004 or so, I thought, geez, how can I take what I know how to do and apply it to something that matters? Because, you can't work as hard as designers and entrepreneurs work without being passionate about it, right? So I looked around, and at that time, 2004, I was like, clean energy, I think that's going to be the most important thing to be working on for every reason you guys all understand. And so I helped start the business plan competition at MIT, which is now the Clean Tech Open, which is the largest clean tech business plan competition. And kind of amidst all that entrepreneurism, I thought, okay, I know what I can do. I can build web-based tools to deliver information to people about what it would mean or how to make things that are better or higher performing or more sustainable. Because if you can embed knowledge into the tools that people use, they don't have to learn separately from doing. And that's pretty much what I've been doing at Sustainable Minds since 2007. We've designed a lot of products and services. And so, and now to bring us to present day, what Patrick is intrigued by is like, how can we take what people have learned over the last, several iterations of big changes in technology, what can we take from those cycles and apply to this new one of how AI is, changing the world in the same way that the internet changed the world, and the same way that, desktop publishing changed the world. So I'm going to stop talking, Patrick. I hope that was
That's
enough.
such a wonderful intro. Because, like, I think the thing that I see from this is like you weren't afraid when something new came to just mess around with it, right? Like, I think that is like the thing that I hope that people are. Well, I see a lot of people doing this. Is they don't just sit back and trust what they read on New York Times. They actually get in there and themselves, and they're trying to like punch through it. And then there's other folks that don't have time to look into those things, and so they're like a little bit more worried about it. I think like when you were looking at each one of those kind of like junction points, along the way of technology and how it applied to your existing skill set or the existing things you had done, what were some of the things that like made you feel like this is that gave you the conviction? I mean, obviously, as an entrepreneur myself, I know that sometimes conviction doesn't come in one aha moment. It can come in several things along the way, or like some conversation you have with someone that kind of like sparks that you know gate changing moment. But I love how you talked about also how you formed a framework for decision making, like
Right.
even for the companies that you were going to. Like, tell me a little bit more about like what are those kind of like inflection points and what kind of led you to kind of make those choices, because everyone's having to face those choices right now
Right.
at their firms and everywhere,
Right. Well, okay. So, Patrick, you and I, we have a little bit of a different perspective because we are entrepreneurs.
really.
So, you know, I started my first company when I was 26 or something, or 27. And, when you have your own company and the world changes, you either change with it or, go get a job. And, I sometimes say to people, I'm kind of unemployable, because what you see is what you get. It's very difficult for me to kind of stifle um, observations, and so uh, I had to figure it out or perish. So, and then the other thing is that I finally got to a point in my life where I felt like, and I learned this from the guy who I worked for, my first job out of college. I thought he was so smart. He always knew the answers to everything. He was a great designer. He was a great business person, and he could talk to any client and run circles around them. I was like, how could he be so smart? And then when I left and I started my first company, and I had a lot of trepidation because I'm not as smart as Roger. And and as I kind of found my footing, I realized my this is the most important aha moment of my life, Patrick. I realized it wasn't that he was so smart, meaning like it wasn't that he knew everything. He could make stuff up on the fly. And he had the confidence to be able to, pull from what he knew and just like make stuff up on the fly. And when I finally realized that, I was like, I can do that too. I can make stuff up on the fly. And then my next aha moment was, if I don't understand something, I'm just going to say so, and then ask enough questions until somebody can explain it to me till I understand it. Because I thought, look, I'm a reasonably smart person. If I don't understand something, there's got to be someone else in the room that doesn't understand it either, and they're going to thank me for. So when I find people, especially like you're a great example, Patrick, I will question you to death. Like, explain this to me. Oh, I don't know. Wait, what about that? What about that? What about that? Um, I love people that are great explainers. That's my best method for learning, is to like listen and then put it all together. But so getting back to the point, when you realize, look, you can learn about stuff the best way you can, and then take what you know already and feel confident what you know already, and then take what you know and apply it to the new stuff that you're learning. And don't feel like somehow that the new stuff that you're learning is better or more important or somehow unassailable. And that brings us right to the topic of AI, because we actually even did a webinar last week, and we're doing a series now at Sustainable Minds looking at how we bring in and manage data in the transparency catalog, and looking at because nobody knows what an API is. So the webinar series is about managing data, the subject APIs, humans, and AI. And so I have to say I was a little initially curious about AI, and then I didn't really understand a year and a half ago how important it was going to be, but it got important really fast, overnight. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to have to learn about this now. But what tool, if you just put it in the right context, it's a tool like any other tool, and it can't replace you as a person. If you learn how to use it as a tool, then you can actually improve your speed, your proficiency, your purview. But it's a tool, and it's only as good as you are and how you choose to use it. And still, it's early days, so there's a lot of things that it's not a good tool for. So with that, you have to start learning about okay, how can I use it in my work as a tool and not let it be the tail wagging the dog,
Yeah.
the dog its tail.
Because that's interesting. Because at our business, one of the things that we've been emphasizing as a culture is to, instead of being reactive to some kind of new technology, that because each person on our team understands what they're doing to an extent that maybe not everyone does, or even myself. I can't understand everything that a software engineer is doing, or everything that my carbon person knows about, or the person who's doing sales. They're going to understand everything a little bit more than I will, right? But one of the things we've been emphasizing is just instead of being reactive, oh, I've been shown something, it doesn't work, or I've been shown something, or it does work, and kind of waiting for other people to bring them things. Instead, having more of a proactive mindset where I'm going to go out, I'm doing something, I want to go find and see if there's a tool that can fix it or help me do it better. And sometimes, there isn't a tool available, and that becomes an opportunity to build something. Or maybe the technology can't do the thing that you think would be great if it could. But then that gives you the ability to then start watching the technology as it grows and say, I want to keep testing every new thing that comes out to see if I can do X. And I think that is the way that a lot of innovation can happen, is just by trying.
Right.
And that kind of speaks a little bit to what you're talking about, right? Where it's you just kept trying stuff, and I'm sure the very first audit thing that you came up with for, a client, maybe that was not exactly what they needed, but then as you talk to them, they're like, oh, this is what we need. Those kinds of trying by doing things are, I think, where some folks they're so afraid to start that they don't ever learn or start something cool.
Right. I think getting back to the asking questions and getting things explained, I'm also very all the time I'll see, the way a software tool works, or I'll see, whatever it is. I'll be like, why is it like that? That makes no sense. It doesn't make sense to me. So, maybe it doesn't make sense to other people. Why is it like that? And more often than not, it's like that because somebody didn't really think it through. And then that's an aha moment to, provide some insight to innovation. And in fact, a little shameless plug here for Project Builder and Library. It's literally what happened when we built the transparency catalog. We launched it in 2016. And, the idea was, geez, for people who are looking to build high performance low carbon, healthy buildings. Why don't we make it easy for them and just create a platform where that's all there is? That's it. That's all there is. So you don't even have to sort through anything. And our real customer is the building product manufacturers, because they're the ones who are spending the money, being transparent. It's difficult, it's risky, and so we want to help them grow their businesses by making it easy for the people who care about their products to find them. So it's a win-win. So we launched the catalog. We're adding more manufacturers, and that's when we started learning about specifications, and so the first couple of years, I must have spoken to at least 100 architects, contractors, specifiers, because we had partnered with Master Specs. So I was learning about specs, and I was like, why is it so difficult? How do buildings ever get built? Why is it so difficult for the people doing product selection to make sure that those products get into the spec, and that what's in the spec actually gets bid on, and then what actually gets identified in the bid, and then what actually gets procured? Like, oh my God, it is so complicated. How does a building ever get built, particularly one that wants to meet these high performance criteria? We spent 7 years designing Project Builder and Library, interviewing hundreds of people to understand, why is this broken? How is it broken? And so, I finally realized the reason the whole process is broken is because everything's siloed. There's gaps in tools and workflows between each stage. There's no tools that work together. There's no collaboration environment. There's no opportunity for people to make decisions collectively that all tie back to the manufacturer, so that everybody in the process can get that product and there's no confusion. And so we're super excited about kind of cracking the nut on that very hard problem, and making that available now. We're pretty excited about that.
That's really cool, and I do encourage folks to check out the Sustainable Minds. I think that's a really, really good piece of software, because normally what I see happens is that architects will try to make, I want one tool that does everything, and then unless it does this very special, very specific thing that only I could possibly want, maybe I won't use it. And so, like, sometimes, like as you mentioned, Terry, everything takes different tools, and they are all tools. AI, Sustainable Minds, our Cove software, everything that we've done in the past has all been like, trying to help people identify the right tool for the job, not trying to use a cannon to kill a flea, for example, as they say, and making sure that you're really thinking about that. I think, like, one of the things that kind of points to is that in architectural education, we're kind of like strapped for time, but then we're also like not sure, like we don't really form a good framework as architects as to why we should use a tool that we use. And as you mentioned before, a lot of times people just do what they did because that's how it's always been done.
Right,
And no
exactly.
one takes the time to think about it. Like that maybe, using Revit to draw a single house might not be a great idea, but maybe, you could use a hand drawing to kind of communicate to someone what the floor plan looks like before you draw it in Revit or something. Like there's like, sometimes, like there's technology isn't, a pencil is a pretty good piece of technology, an AI is a pretty good piece of technology, but they all have limitations. And I think that framework for why we do what we do, or how we choose what we are going to use, is just something that I think we could all stand to get better at. But
Right.
really interesting, I think, thinking about that. I
Don't
guess,
even get me started on sketching.
I know,
The
like
lost art.
for me too, like I'm always thinking about, like, now with a lot of the AI visualization tools for, like, you can give something a mid journey.
Right.
A hand sketch is the best armature possible, honestly, sometimes to get exactly what you're wanting to get to. So I find that very interesting.
When I was in school, I had this drawing teacher who taught a course called Drawing on the Back of a Napkin. And he literally was teaching people to think conceptually and be able to, and that skill came in handy when whiteboards became a thing, right? Because to be able to kind of just like sketch out an idea without becoming too explicit, because that's another thing about the range of prototyping tools or design tools. When you're in early stage design, you can't use an explicit tool. It's too hard, it's too cumbersome, it's and it's too precise. In early stage design, you're doing concepts, and concepts are loosely defined and rapidly changing. And so you need tools that actually support a process like that. That's a whole other webinar, Patrick.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I'd love to get into that with folks as well, because I feel like, but there's so much things that we can borrow from AEC, from the software industry, because Terry, you probably have heard of this before, maybe not, but like pattern language was like
Sure.
for Alexander.
I got my pattern language book right up there.
Yeah, so a lot of computer science is based on that. He was an
Right.
architect, but
Yeah.
the idea of the separation of concerns, which is basically like you take code and you don't make a giant long block of it, but you have different parts and pieces, that comes from the idea of the pattern language. So a lot, like all of software engineering is in some way kind of traces its origin back to architecture and how we deliver it. I'm just like amazed sometimes at how unaware the AEC is of how much software is like what they do, and even to the point that like there's the whole title software
Right.
architect.
Well, if we're making those kind of analogies, user experience design is also based on an architectural principle from Vitruvius. So Vitruvius said architecture was commodity, firmness, commodity, and delight, right? So the three aspects of user experience is usefulness, usability, and desirability. It's the identical thing, right? Firmness, commodity, and delight. So in user experience design, first you say you got to design something that's useful for a user. What is that useful thing? Then you have to ask the question, okay, if they want to use it, can they use it? So that's the usability piece. And then if they want to use it and they can use it, can you make them love using it? And there's disciplines that align to each of those attributes of user experience, where there's metrics and criteria and insights on how to design. You blend it all together and you get a great product that's really useful, easy to use, and people love it.
Man,
And architecture right there.
yeah, this is so cool. Well, I know as we're kind of coming up on the end here, if people have questions, y'all feel free to ask. If there's questions that we don't get to, obviously Terry and I will respond back. Also, I know we're both like on LinkedIn, so we can add some of those comments on there as well. But it's just really cool. I think just kind of getting together, talking about these things. You also have a book too, right? If I'm
No,
not
it's not my book.
Oh,
You have
it's
a book. You're the one with the book.
So I was gonna say, that like from just like thinking through the process, I think like there's a lot of resources out there. Obviously, we wrote a book about it's called "Build Like It's the End of the World." I know that there'll probably be a link to that on this one, but there's a lot of resources, I guess, available to think about and form a framework for how you evaluate technology, because AI is constantly going to be changing. Every few months, we have a new model that's way more capable than the previous ones. Anything you can think of, you can probably build now, even now, in terms of software. But the problem is, you got to think about what you want to build. So I think like having a framework to evaluate your workflows, understanding how to make them better. These are things that everyone's going to have to become a little bit more aware of, like accepting less of like, I just use this software because that's the way it is. But thinking about what kind of problems should I be solving? How can I see those opportunities within the space that I'm working in? And I think, Terry, your story of like recognizing those opportunities, moving on them, and using those things to further bring forward your career and your businesses that you've created, and certainly Sustainable Minds, now that you guys are kind of incorporating some AI into that too. It just really gives me encouragement to know that like everyone who's working on the sustainability problem, we can leverage some of this new technology to continue helping us advance it. I think that's going to be the key, especially in the world that we're moving into with so much AI. We really got to use that if we want to
Right.
lower lower the barriers.
But I would, to put a finer point on it, because you and I have discussed this offline before we leave, our teams and your teams are using AI to facilitate the people on the team working more efficiently. The AI is not solving the problem. It's helping people solve the problem more quickly, maybe with more assuredness. But the AI is not solving the problem. It's a tool. And so I think, Patrick, to your point, people need to think about what are the right things, one, to ask it, and what are the right things to get it to help with, that can actually speed things up, make maybe enable you to look at a broader data set in a shorter period of time, but nonetheless, you still have to do the analysis in the end. It still is a person that needs to look at the content that's been acquired and accumulated. And it is, pretty much always going to be that way until people decide to give up on humanity.
Well, I guess it looks like we're running a little bit out of time, but I love that final concluding thought. It's not people pushing a button; it's people making things happen.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I love that. Okay.
Well, this is so cool. Well, hopefully we'll answer any of the questions that come through as well. I know we've kind of run a little bit on the time, but I hope this has been helpful for everyone that's come out to listen to us today. And just check out Sustainable Minds. If you got a project as well.
Transparencycatalog.com.
Yeah. And like if you guys need sustainability consulting services, we'd love to make a proposal on your next project. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. See ya.
All right.